I don't need help taking this off. I'll not be making a squire out of you. I've never had a squire in the past. And this is not the time to start. With royalty. But thank you anyway. You don't want to be a knight. No, you're destined for bigger things. Here, take a drink. No, sure. Maybe on my best day, I could protect, I don't know, a dozen people. But you will protect an entire kingdom. Tens of thousands of people. Why? Well, I suppose protecting people is the duty of a knight. You know, it was never always pronounced knight. Knigat, the old word. It meant a servant. Because ultimately, that's what you're meant to do. To serve. To help people. I don't know who said it, but I remember one fella said, if you want to keep yourself healthy, feed yourself well. But if you want to keep your soul healthy, feed others who can't feed themselves. A good monarch, I guess, is the grandest knight of all. Protecting others. And so, fair enough, you will be a knight one day. That reminds me, grab some of that to eat now. Sure, no one likes squirrel, do they? No, it's hardly gourmet food. People aren't falling about themselves for squirrel. But there's just nothing else here. Oh yeah, when we get through, maybe a little deeper in the forest, then there might be rabbits, I guess. Mushrooms. But for right now, we're relegated to squirrels. Well, where do you think we're going? Camelot doesn't exist anymore. At least, not in the way you're thinking about it. I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure it ever existed. I remember I met an old feller once in a tavern. He was very drunk, But he told me he was the son of one of the knights of the Round Table. Now this old fella was clearly a knight. He just knew things that only knights know, and he carried himself in a way that knights carry themselves. So of that I had no doubt. And he was old and he was drunk, so I didn't want to contradict him or even ask him further questions. But I wasn't convinced. I think Camelot is something inside. It's like a symbol of all things that are good. Nobility, chivalry, that sort of thing. So I'm not sure it exists in that conventional sense, but it exists like an idea exists. So no, we're not going to Camelot. We're going to see your uncle. He's a fine man. Very wise man. He'll know what's happened. But he'll not know that you escaped. He'll know what to do. Sure, if I knew what to do, we wouldn't be going there to travel and ask him, would we? I know that he'll know what to do, but I don't know what he'll know. You know, the more wise you become, the more you realize how ignorant you are in some matters. I think it was an old wise feller, Greek feller called Socrates. And the Delphis at Oracle, they were the wise. They had a connection to God, so they did. And they declared Socrates the wisest man in all of Greece, because he alone knew that he knew nothing. Right. You remember what I told you about the openings themselves? What we're looking to do is control these squares here and to develop our pieces. And of course this was the one that we learned because it helps that. But we could also have a very similar effect by moving the queen's pawn forward. Now this strategy can be extended to something called a gambit. Now a gambit is when you sacrifice a piece of some sort to give yourself a better position or such like. And this here would be called the Queen's Gambit. Now there are two variations here. There's the Queen's Gambit accepted, like so. And then there's the Queen's Gambit declined, like so. Now I'm of the opinion that it is somewhat unsporting not to take the gambit. You know, we want the cut and the thrust of the action. So let's do that. And this is a fine opening either way. Now here comes the beauty of the gambit. Now white controls both of these squares here as well. And the bishop can take that pawn and get it back. Now the question becomes, is it even worth trying to hold on to that pawn? As in, is it really a gambit? If we put this pawn forward here, we can have a good old go. But it stops the queen a little. But there are many things that white can do to try to challenge this technique. You might end up in a position where you're making just pawn moves. As we know, we're aiming to develop our pieces. So perhaps in this case, we can forward and attack in the center again. If white were to take, then we'll trade the queens. King must take back, and thus he's no longer able to castle, and somewhat vulnerable. So there probably won't be a take. More likely, more pressure we put on. And then the bishop feller can pin the knight, so it's not able to take without the queen being lost. Or you could develop the knight like that. Again, putting a little bit more pressure and developing the situation. There are many variations, and I'm not going to suggest for a second I'm an expert with them. I just know that that's one of the gambits, and I think it's worth knowing, and I think it's worth practicing. Right, well, I think that's enough of that. I'll teach you another one later. I hate this sword. Because nothing good ever came of violence. That's why. No. Sure, it only exists to ward away more violence. But the enemy of my enemy is most certainly not my friend. I hope you never have to swing a sword in your life. It's not a pleasant thing. What type of story? Here, have a drink. Let me think then. Have you heard of the one about the crow and the fox? Oh, a crow. A fox is a very wise animal. Cunning. As cunning as a fox, they say, don't they? But one time, this fox, he was hungry. And he went to a farmer's house. And through the window there he could see a lovely lump of cheese. And oh, how that fox wanted that. Mightily hungry, so he was. So he looked at the window and he thought, well, I can't go through the door now, can I? But I also won't be able to get that window open. So he climbed up there to see what he could see. And he poured at that window as hard as he could. But it did nothing. All it did was attract the attention of the farmer, who saw him and ran after him and chased him off. Off you go, away with you, filthy fox. And so the fox was outdone. And then came along the crow. Sure, a crow is the most magnificent of birds. I think, anyway. Elegant, but so clever. Have you ever watched a crow? Oh, they're so clever. They can use tools and everything. I've seen them use tools before. But anyway, this crow, it also saw the cheese. And it thought to itself, I am mightily hungry. What I wouldn't do for that cheese. And so he flew to the window and he noticed the window was open, just a crack. Just a crack. And so he went and he got a twig. And he fashioned it into a lever. Then he levered open that window. And then in he popped, grabbed the cheese, flew off. Off he went with his prize. And he went up a tree. Now while he was up that tree, the fox, quite dejected, came walking by. And he saw the crow with the cheese. And he thought to himself, that was the cheese I wanted. He looked at the crow. The crow looked back, thinking, I'm safe, I'm all the way up here. And the fox, he says to the crow, oh my goodness, look how beautiful you are. And the crow looks at him confused, like, you're going to have to eat that squirrel. I know it's not lovely, but you know that your uncle is a mighty king. There'll be feasts when you arrive, I can assure you. And drink. I wish it was beer as well. Anyway, you've distracted me. Oh yes, the crow says, oh, how mighty is the... You've really distracted me here now. Okay, good. I'm glad. And then the fox says to the crow, oh my goodness, you are so beautiful. Look at your feathers, how iridescent they are. Aye, and look at your eyes. Such a gleam in your eyes. And your beak. And your feet. How graceful you move yourself. Oh, sure, it is wonderful. And the crow starts to get a smile on his face. And the fox says, I wonder if you sound as beautiful as you look. Would you do me the honor of singing me a song? And of course the crow, being in a very different frame of mind, started to sing, but the second he opened his beak, that cheese fell to the ground now. And the fox, well, he gobbled it all up. Now there's a moral to that. No matter how clever you are, no one is immune to flattery. What do you mean that wasn't a good one? It's one of my favourites, that one. Good lesson to be learned from that one. Oh yeah. Ah, now I get it. Usually you get that from flattery. I've told you, I only know the one song, but I'll sing it again for if you like. I find it quite a melancholy song because it reminds me of home. It reminds me a little of my own parents. They died when I was very young too. Sure, I'll sing it. If you lie down and get some rest. I played the wild rover for many years, and I spent all me money on whiskey and beer. But now I returned with golden great store, and I never shall play the wild rover no more. And it's no say never, no say never no more. Shall I play the wild rover? No, never, no more. I went up to an ale house I used to frequent, and I told the landlady me money was spent. I asked her for credit. She answered me nay. Such custom as yours I could have any day, and it's no say never. No say never no more. Sure I'll play the wild rover. No, never, no more. I pulled from me pocket 10 sovereigns bright, and the landlady's eyes, they grew wild with delight. She said, I have whiskey and wines of the best, and the words I said previous were only in jest. And it's no say never, no say never no more. Sure I'll play the wild rover never, no more. I'll go back to me family, confess what I've done, and I'll ask them to pardon their prodigal son. And when they embrace me, as oft have before, well, I never shall play the wild rover no more, and it's no say never. No say never no more. Sure I'll play the wild rover, no never no more, and it's no say no say never no more. Sure I'll play the wild rover, no never